I never thought loneliness had a sound, but it does. It sounds like metal spoons tapping against an empty plate. It sounds like a clock ticking on a wall no one looks at. It sounds like a chair creaking under a grandmother who eats alone, every single night. That grandmother is me. My name is Evelyn, but everyone in this house just calls me Gran. Not Mom. Not Grandma. Just Gran. A label. A duty. A background noise. Dinner used to be my favorite time of day. I'd cook for my family, real meals, seasoned with love, patience, and old recipes passed down from women who survived war, poverty, and heartbreak. But somewhere between my wrinkles deepening, and my hair turning silver, my presence became an inconvenience. Now, I eat at the small wooden table in the corner of the kitchen. Alone. Facing a blank wall. Because my daughter-in-law says the dining table is too crowded when everyone sits together. The truth? They don't want an old woman in their family photos. Tonight felt like any other lonely night. A bowl of soup. A dim light. A shaky hand holding a spoon. And a heart quietly learning to break without making noise. But then, as I shifted my weight, trying to ease the ache in my back, I heard it. Crack. Sharp. Sudden. Violent. Then the world tilted. The chair beneath me snapped in half. My body crashed to the floor. The bowl of soup spilled across the tiles, splattering like a painting of all the moments I had swallowed my pain. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I couldn't even cry. All I could do was stare up at the ceiling, and wonder if this was finally the moment life decided I had lived long enough. My son rushed in when he heard the noise. Not because he cared about me, but because he thought someone broke a dish. When he saw me on the floor, he froze. His eyes widened, not with concern, but embarrassment. "Mom, what are you doing?" he whispered harshly. Like my fall was something I did on purpose to shame him. My daughter-in-law appeared behind him, her arms crossed, irritation twitching on her lips. "Oh my God," she said, rolling her eyes, "did she break another chair?" "Another?" "No. Just this one." But it didn't matter. To them, everything I touched was already broken. My son knelt beside me, but not to help me stand. Just to whisper. "Mom, why didn't you sit at the new dining table? You know this one is old." Old. Just like me. I tried to speak, but the breath caught in my chest. My daughter-in-law sighed loudly. "We'll have to buy a new chair now." "Great. More expenses." She looked at me as though I had done something unforgivable. And right then, right there on that cold kitchen floor, I realized something I had been too afraid to admit. I wasn't part of this family anymore. I was their responsibility. A burden. A cost. When my son finally helped me up, the pain shot up my spine like fire. But the real pain wasn't physical. It was emotional. And yet, as I grabbed the countertop for support, something caught my eye. The broken legs of the chair. The wood wasn't old. It wasn't worn out. It wasn't even cracked before. It had been sawed. Clean. Precise. Deliberate. Someone weakened it. Someone wanted it to break. And suddenly the loneliness I'd felt for years twisted into something darker. Fear. Because now I knew, I wasn't just unwanted. I might be unsafe. And that night, the night my chair broke, was only the beginning of a truth my family never expected me to uncover. I remember the sound before anything else. A slow, painful, cracking sound. But let me not get ahead of myself. Let me tell you what really happened that night, the night the house finally spoke the truth my family kept ignoring. I had placed my dinner on the table, cold by the time I sat down. It was always cold lately. Food tastes different when no one waits for you. My family had eaten already. My daughter was scrolling through her phone, my son-in-law watching TV, and the kids were laughing loudly in the other room. No one even noticed I hadn't sat with them. No one asked. I had gotten used to it. Or at least I told myself I had. I lowered myself onto the old wooden chair, the same one I'd used for 15 years. But something felt different. It wobbled, just slightly, like it was tired too. I ignored it. Old things wobble when they're overused, right? Just like old people. I picked up my fork and whispered a small prayer, a habit from the years when we used to eat together as a family. Back when this house felt warm. Back when they still looked at me as someone precious, not a burden who needed to hurry up or sit somewhere else so the kids have room. The food on my plate looked ordinary. But my hands were trembling. Not because I was weak, but because the loneliness was finally carving itself into my bones. I took a bite. Chewed slowly. The silence around me was so heavy I could hear my own heartbeat. And then, the chair shifted under me. Just a little. I froze. I thought maybe it was just the floorboard. But the second shift was sharper. And the third, enough to make the table rattle. I grabbed the edges of the table. My breath caught in my throat. Not now. Please not now. I tried to stand up, but my knees buckled, my joints were too swollen from working all day. The pain shot up like a spark, locking me in place. I sat back down hard, and that was the final mistake. Crack-hack. The sound tore through the kitchen like the house itself was screaming. The back leg of the chair snapped. My body tilted backward, my plate flew forward, and I felt my breath leave my chest. I hit the floor. Hard. A cold shock went through me as my elbow struck the tiles. My hip twisted awkwardly, a sharp pain shooting down my side. But the worst part? The part that broke me more than the fall? The silence that followed. The silence that meant nobody rushed. Nobody gasped. Nobody shouted, "Mom. Are you okay?" Nothing. Just the television. And the kids' laughter. And the sound of my daughter saying, "Is someone cooking again? I smell something burning." I lay there, unable to move, my breath shallow and hot tears slipping down my cheeks. Not from the fall. But from the realization. They didn't hear me. They didn't notice me. They didn't feel that something had gone wrong. I was a ghost in my own home. My fingers crawled toward the table leg, grasping it to pull myself up. Every movement felt like dragging 100 pounds through mud. My hip screamed. My elbow throbbed. But what hurt the most was my heart. My voice cracked as I whispered, "Help." Barely a sound. Barely a word. But all I could manage. The tears kept falling, slow, warm, painful, as I curled slightly on the cold floor, waiting for someone, anyone, to notice. Minutes passed. Minutes that felt like hours. The lights flickered as if even the house was grieving with me. Finally, footsteps approached. But not fast. Not urgent. Just annoyed. My daughter appeared at the doorway, holding her phone in one hand, not even looking up at first. "Mom, why are you on the floor?" Her words stopped. Her eyes widened. And in that moment, I saw it, the first spark of fear. Real fear. The kind that said, "Maybe we've ignored you too long. Maybe we pushed you aside too far. Maybe we broke more than just a chair tonight." She dropped her phone. It clattered across the floor. "Mom." Her scream filled the room. But the truth was, it came too late. Not the scream. Not the attention. The realization. Because lying there, unable to stand, unable to breathe properly, I finally understood something. A chair breaking wasn't an accident. It was a symbol. A message. A warning. And what it warned me about wasn't the fall. But what was coming next. The chair that knew the truth before anyone else. I sat at the table that night, the same lonely spot I'd eaten at for years. The corner. The one nobody else ever touched. Not because it was mine, but because nobody wanted it. The chair creaked the moment I lowered myself onto it. I felt the wood struggling under my weight, but I didn't move. I didn't dare complain. Complaining in this house had a cost. My daughter-in-law's voice was still echoing from earlier, sharp as broken glass. Don't expect anyone to wait for you. If you want dinner, warm it yourself. So I warmed it myself. Even though my hands shook. Even though my knees ached. Even though I could barely breathe that day. I placed the plate on the table, reached for the fork, and then I heard footsteps. My grandson peeked into the kitchen, eyes soft with concern. "Grandma, you okay?" I forced a smile. A tired, cracked smile held together only by habit. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Go do your homework." He hesitated. Kids always know when something's wrong. They're quiet little witnesses to everything adults pretend not to see. But before he could say anything else, his mother's voice barked from the hallway. "Lucas." I said, "No snacking. Get out of the kitchen." He glanced at me one more time, then slipped away, shoulders dropped. And just like that, I was alone again. The house hummed around me. A distant TV. The clatter of dishes. The muffled giggles of my grandkids. Life happening everywhere, except where I sat. I lifted my fork, but the chair groaned beneath me, louder this time. I froze. A crack ran down the right leg, thin, but growing. Like a wound finally opening. I placed my hand on the table for balance, but my wrist trembled. "Not now. Not tonight. Please, not tonight." Crack. It happened so fast. The chair leg split. The wood snapped sideways. My body pitched backward. For a second, it felt like the whole world let go of me. My hand scrambled for anything, the edge of the table, the air, the plate, but everything slipped from my grasp. I hit the floor. Hard. Pain shot up my spine. The plate shattered beside me, sharp pieces skidding across the tiles. For a moment, no one came. No one heard. No one cared. I laid there, breathing in the stillness. The cold tiles pressed against my cheek. Tears slipped out without permission, quiet, hot, humiliating. I wasn't crying from the fall. I was crying from the truth. This house wasn't mine anymore. Not my chair. Not my place at the table. Not my voice. Not my worth. I was a shadow in my own home. Finally, footsteps rushed in. My son was the first to appear, eyes wide. "Mom. What happened?" He knelt beside me, lifting me gently, hands shaking. But before he could say more, his wife stormed in with a scowl. "For God's sake, what did she break now?" Her voice stabbed straight through me. She didn't ask if I was hurt. She didn't ask if I was breathing. She didn't ask if I could walk. She only asked what I broke. My son snapped back. "Emily." Her chair collapsed. She could have cracked her head open. Emily folded her arms, rolling her eyes. "Well, maybe she shouldn't sit on that old thing. I told you to throw it out." Those words. Throw it out. Like the chair. Like me. My son gently raised me to a sitting position. "Mom, did you feel dizzy? Did your legs give out?" I looked at him, my grown boy, desperate to understand what went wrong. I wanted to tell him everything. The loneliness. The exhaustion. The quiet cruelty I endured every day. But I just whispered. "The chair, it just gave up." Emily scoffed loudly. "Maybe we all have," she muttered. My son's jaw clenched in anger. "Emily. Enough." But the damage was already done. Her words were a mirror, reflecting exactly what I already knew. I wasn't wanted. I wasn't included. I wasn't seen. My son helped me stand. My legs trembled, my body aching. And for the first time, I wondered if the chair breaking wasn't an accident. Maybe it was a sign. A warning. A message from the universe. If no one sees your pain, one day, it will show itself. Loudly. Violently. Unavoidably. And tonight, it had begun. And the worst part? More was coming. Much more. The night their voices turned sharp. I swear. There are moments in life when silence becomes louder than screaming. That night, after the broken chair incident, the house felt cold. Not the kind of cold you fix with blankets. The kind that slips under your skin and sits next to your heart. I sat quietly in my room, still shaken, still embarrassed, still replaying the moment the chair snapped beneath me, the gasps, the stares, the pity, the humiliation. But I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt. But because the hurt was too deep for tears. Sometime around 9, I heard voices downstairs. Sharp voices. Fast voices. Arguing. At first, I didn't want to listen. But the walls in this house were thin, and a heart already broken doesn't need much to shatter again. Mom could have gotten seriously hurt, my daughter snapped. She's fine, her husband replied. It was an old chair. Things break. Things break? SHE broke that chair because it was weak, unstable, and you refused to replace it. I froze. Was I a burden? A problem? A weight they carried because they had no choice? My son-in-law's voice hardened. She's too old to be lifting things. She's too old to be climbing on stools. Too old to be fussing around the dining room. Why was she even trying to fix the table at that hour? My daughter fired back. Because we don't help her. Because she's always trying not to disturb us. Because she eats alone. The words sliced through me. Eat alone. I pressed my hand to my chest. They knew? They saw? They heard the clinking of a spoon against a plate in an empty room and did nothing? Another voice entered, Emily. My daughter's cousin who had been staying with us temporarily. Temporary, yet she had more space in the kitchen than I did. Emily's tone was toxic and sweet. Maybe she likes eating alone. Elderly people are set in their ways. Besides, she's fragile. She shouldn't move around so much. Fragile. A word people use when they're too polite to say useless. My daughter wasn't having it. She's not fragile. She's tired. Tired because we keep acting like she's in the way. A chair scraped loudly. Someone stood. Then came a sentence that knocked the wind out of me. Honestly, Emily said, arms crossed, I think it's time to move her to a facility. At least she won't break furniture there. My breath caught. The room spun. A facility. They were talking about me like I was a piece of old furniture, ready to be moved out, to make space. My daughter snapped. Don't you ever say that again. Why? Emily spat. She's old. She's getting clumsy. She can't even sit without breaking something. Stop it. The house fell silent. I could picture my daughter, shaking, her face red with anger. She broke a chair, not her worth, my daughter said through clenched teeth. And if you think she's a burden, then you can leave. Tonight. Silence. Then footsteps. Heavy ones. Emily stormed up the stairs. Stopped outside my door. My heart beat so loud I thought she could hear it. Then she whispered, bitter and venomous. This house isn't big enough for all of us. And she walked away. I sat there, shaking. Not because of what she said, but because a small part of me believed it. Because that broken chair didn't just snap wood, it snapped something inside me. Something fragile. Something old. Something tired. But what none of them knew, what even I didn't understand at the time, was that the broken chair was just the beginning. The night after it snapped, something else would break. Something much, much louder. Something that would force every person in that house to face the truth about how they treated me. And it would happen sooner than any of us expected. The night they finally saw me. I don't know what woke me first, loneliness, or the sound of wood cracking under my weight. Either way, I was on the kitchen floor before I even understood what was happening. My chair, the one I'd been eating on for years, lay broken beside me like a shattered memory. A sharp pain ran up my hip, but I didn't scream. I didn't want to bother anyone. I'd gotten used to silence. Every night, I ate alone. At the edge of the kitchen table. With a plate of food they left for me out of obligation, not love. Sometimes I'd hear laughter from the living room, my daughter, my son-in-law, the kids. And I stayed here. In the kitchen. Alone. Unseen. So when I hit the floor, the first thing I whispered was, "Don't let them hear, please God, not tonight." But fate didn't care what I wanted. My plate had shattered, glass everywhere, my food splattered across the tiles. A bowl rolled across the floor, hitting the fridge with a loud metallic clang. My daughter's voice shot through the hallway. "Mom? Mom, what was that?" I wanted to hide. I wanted to get up before they saw me like this, a crumpled old woman on the floor, sitting beside a broken chair like trash waiting to be taken out. I tried to push myself up, but my arm trembled uncontrollably. The pain in my hip pulsed, sharp and deep. Footsteps rushed toward the kitchen. Then everything went quiet. My daughter froze in the doorway, hands covering her mouth, eyes wide with horror. "Mom, oh my God. Mom." She rushed toward me, knees hitting the floor as she grabbed my arms. "What happened? Why didn't you call us? Why were you eating alone again?" Her voice was full of panic. I didn't know whether to cry or whisper that same excuse I'd been using for years. I didn't want to disturb anyone. But this time, the words wouldn't come out. My son-in-law appeared next, sliding to his knees beside her. "Ma'am, are you hurt? Can you move? Don't try to stand, okay? Stay still. Please." He sounded terrified. Not annoyed. Not impatient. Not dismissive. Terrified. The kids stood behind them, staring at the scene with wide, shocked eyes. And for the first time in a long time, they weren't ignoring me. My daughter's hands were shaking as she brushed my hair away from my face. "Mom, were you crying while eating?" I didn't answer. But she could see the tear marks on my cheeks. She looked around the kitchen, the empty chair against the wall, the untouched chairs at the dining table, the food left out for me like crumbs for a stray animal. Her face changed. Completely. Guilt. Fear. Shame. All washing over her at once. "Why didn't you tell us the chair was loose?" she whispered. "Why didn't you tell us it was breaking?" "Because you never listen." I almost said. "Because every time I speak, you're too busy." Because somewhere along the way, I became part of the house, something you pass by, not someone you care about. But I only whispered. I didn't want to be a burden. My daughter's lips trembled. "You're not a burden. You're my mother." Her voice cracked, and she broke down crying right there beside me. My son-in-law gently placed a blanket around my shoulders. "We're taking you to the hospital," he said softly. "You might have hurt your hip. But more than that, we need to fix what we broke long before this chair." His eyes glistened with guilt. The kid sat on the floor beside me, one holding my hand, the other resting his head on my shoulder. And in that moment, that painfully quiet, heartbreaking moment, they finally saw me. Not as a shadow. Not as an extra body in the house. But as the woman who raised them, fed them, loved them, and slowly disappeared in the corners of their busy lives. As they helped me stand, I realized something. This wasn't just a broken chair. It was the breaking point. And everything was about to change. The break I didn't deserve. I don't know how long I stayed on that cold floor. Minutes? Hours? Pain always makes time feel like melted glass, slow, burning, impossible to touch. I kept thinking someone, anyone, would walk in. My son. My daughter-in-law. The children. They always passed through the kitchen 100 times a day. But tonight, the house was quiet. Too quiet. My voice trembled as I whispered, "Hello? Can anyone hear me?" Silence. I looked toward the door, just a dim hallway, one bulb flickering like it, too, was tired of being seen. My chair lay splintered beside me, its legs snapped clean, like it finally gave up too. A bitter laugh escaped my lips, mixed with a choked sob. "Just like me," I whispered. "Everything around me breaks, and no one notices." As I pushed myself to sit upright, pain stabbed through my hip. Sharp. Cold. Paralyzing. But I didn't have the luxury of screaming. This house had made one thing clear. My pain was my own. I tried to stand, using the counter as support, but my legs shook uncontrollably. The pain shot up again, fiercer this time. My breath caught, and that's when I saw it. A shadow at the door. "Hello?" My voice cracked like dry wood. The shadow stepped closer, and for a moment, I thought it was my son. But it wasn't. It was my granddaughter, Lily. Small, fragile, 9 years old, with eyes that saw too much. Her tiny voice trembled, "Grandma, why are you on the floor?" Something inside me broke again, but this time, it wasn't a bone. It was the dam I kept locked so tightly inside. I swallowed the tears. I think I fell, sweetheart." She rushed toward me, kneeling beside me, her small hand touching my cheek gently, as if she was afraid I would crumble into dust. Did they not hear you?" she whispered. I didn't want to answer. She already knew. She always knew. That child, she saw the world differently. She saw the truth adults pretended not to see. "I'll get Daddy," she said and started to run. "No, wait." My voice came out sharper than intended. She turned, confused. "Sweetheart, don't call them yet. Just help me sit up properly." Her little brows furrowed. "But Grandma, you're hurting." I managed a faint smile. "One day, Lily, you'll understand why some people suffer quietly." Tears welled up in her eyes. "No. I don't want you to be quiet. I want you to tell me." That sentence, from a child, hit me harder than the fall. She stayed by my side, helping me lean against the cabinet. She held my hand like it was the most important task she had ever been given. "Grandma," she said softly, "you always eat alone. You always look sad. And I hear you cry sometimes at night." Her voice broke a little. "I wanted to sit with you, but Mommy said you like being alone." My heart shattered. I never wanted to be alone," I whispered. "Not once." Her lip trembled. "Then why don't you tell them?" "Because they don't want to hear. Because they only see what they want to see. Because my silence makes their lives easier." But I couldn't tell her that. Instead, I squeezed her hand. "Lily, someday you'll grow up. Never let anyone make you small." Her gaze softened, filled with a kind of wisdom children shouldn't have yet. "I won't let them hurt you anymore," she whispered fiercely. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Warm. Gentle. Painful, because it reminded me of everything I had been starved of. That's when we heard footsteps, heavy, rushed, irritated. My daughter-in-law's voice echoed from the hall sharply. "Lily? What are you doing up at this hour? And why are you?" She froze when she saw me on the floor. Her eyes widened, not out of concern, but out of shock. She didn't say, "Oh my God, are you hurt?" or "Let me help you." No. Her first words were, "Why didn't you call us?" Lily stood up, glaring at her mother with a fire I'd never seen before. "She did." Lily snapped. But no one listened. My daughter-in-law stiffened. Caught. Exposed. Cornered by her own child's truth. Silence filled the room again, but this silence was different. It wasn't the silence of neglect. It wasn't the silence of loneliness. It was the silence before a storm. A storm this family desperately needed. Because after tonight, nothing would stay the same. Not the kitchen. Not the routine. Not the roles. Not the truth they tried so hard to bury. And certainly, not me. The night they finally saw me. I didn't expect them all to show up. Not my daughter. Not my son-in-law. Not the grandchildren who could barely look up from their phones. And definitely not the neighbor girl who used to bring me leftover soup in secret, afraid her mother would scold her for spoiling an old lady. But that night, the night my chair broke beneath me, the night the doctor said I could have fractured my spine, the night my silence screamed louder than any words, they gathered. Not because they remembered me. Not because they suddenly loved me. But because they were forced to face the truth they had ignored for years. I was alone. Invisible. Forgotten in my own home. My daughter stood at the foot of the hospital bed, gripping the rails like she was the one trying to hold herself together. "Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Why didn't you tell us you were eating alone? Why didn't you tell us your chair was broken? Why didn't you call out?" I looked at her with the same tired eyes that had watched this world for 8 long decades. "I did," I said. "You just weren't listening." She winced like I had slapped her. My son-in-law stepped forward, clearing his throat. We thought you were okay. You always said you were fine." I almost laughed. Fine. The favorite lie of every ignored elder. "I said I was fine," I answered, "because every time I said I wasn't, you said I was complaining, or overreacting, or being dramatic. After a while, silence feels safer." My words hung in the air. Heavy. True. Unavoidable. My granddaughter stepped closer, her voice small. "Nana, we didn't know you were eating alone every night. We didn't know you sat at an empty table. Why didn't anyone sit with you?" I smiled sadly. Because everyone had somewhere else to be. The neighbor girl, sweet, gentle, honest, spoke up from the corner. "I knew," she said softly. "I saw her through the window. She always ate by herself, quietly, like she didn't want the chair to make noise. When it broke, I heard it from across the yard." My daughter covered her face with her hands and sobbed. For the first time, I felt something shift in the room. Not pity. Not guilt. Recognition. They finally saw me, not as a chore, not as background noise, not as someone taking up space. But as a human being whose loneliness had become a silent death. My daughter moved closer and took my hand in both of hers. "Mom, we're taking you home. And it won't be the same house you left. I swear to you, we will never, ever let you sit at that table alone again." I didn't answer immediately. Promises are easy. Change is hard. So I spoke gently but firmly. "I don't need a different house. I need a different family. If you can be that family, I'll come home." There was silence. Then my son-in-law bowed his head. "We will be," he said. "We already lost the chance to make your old age easy. We won't lose the chance to make your future better." My granddaughter climbed into the chair beside me, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Nana, can you teach me how to eat with you?" My heart cracked open. That small question, that tiny request, meant more than 1,000 apologies. I squeezed her hand gently. "Yes, sweetheart," I whispered. "We'll start tomorrow." As the rain tapped the windows and the room warmed with quiet breaths and softer hearts, I realized something. I had eaten alone for years. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't alone anymore. This was the story of a grandmother whose silence carried more pain than her family ever imagined. She never complained. She never demanded anything. She just sat alone at that table, night after night, waiting for someone to notice the empty chair beside her. But sometimes, it takes a broken moment to reveal a broken heart. If this story touched you, remember one thing: there are elders in our homes who are fighting quiet battles every single day. Don't wait for their chair to break. Don't wait for tragedy to open your eyes. See them. Hear them. Love them, today. If this story moved your heart, please hit like. Drop a comment below. And subscribe for more dark emotional granny stories just like this. Your one click helps these stories reach someone who might be hurting in silence right now. Before you go, tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? I'd love to know how far these stories are traveling.